Thanks everyone for coming back promptly. I'm excited that we have our first bill referred from another committee and grateful to Chair McCarthy for joining us to talk us through the committee's thinking. Do you want to join us? Yeah, thank you. You know, everyone, is it helpful for us to do a little go around introductions?
I think that I know everybody. If you want to dispense with that, I think.
Great. Okay, we will. Thank you.
The bill's under Tucker's name.
And the bill is under Tucker's name, if anyone wants to pull it up.
Got 1.1.
So for the record, I am Representative Mike McCarthy from St. Albans. I am the chair of the House Government Operations and Military Affairs Committee. We weren't racing, but we definitely felt some urgency around the impending desire that many communities have to get their town meeting day warnings out about the method of balloting, the dates that they were going to have their actual votes for town meeting, and some flexibility for communities to be able to move their town meeting dates for communities who have a traditional town meeting from the floor, which many do. The ability for them to move to Australian ballot if they feel the need to do so was flexibility that many towns had asked us to consider. And we, in H42, have given that town meeting day flexibility. Again, it's permissive. It's not, we're not mandating it, but we're giving communities, towns, cities, and incorporated villages the ability to make some of those decisions. The other piece that we covered here was the extension, which is expiring on the 15th, that we had originally done during COVID with Act 1 and then extended, I think, in Act 78. Tucker can correct me if I'm wrong, for all public meetings. So not just town meeting day, but all public meetings that are subject to the open meeting law for folks to be able to meet remotely. We talked a bit about sort of everything from the climate benefit in terms of reduced mile travel to the fact that COVID is still with us. We're seeing increased cases, and the ability for folks to continue to meet remotely is sometimes great, especially if you have the member of one of those public bodies that gets sick. They can still participate and vote. If we have this authority extended, it expires on the 15th. So there's some urgency around that as well. And then we, the reason I'm here before you is that we also, with communication from folks like the superintendents to me and your chair about ballot language that I believe many of you worked on in the people waiting conversation around changing the, giving some flexibility to the specific language for the parts of those ballots that's about the school budgets. We have very prescriptive language in statute. It was disregarded for fiscal years 25 through 29, but they left out this coming fiscal year 24. And we heard from folks that it would lead to some pretty confused voters potentially, and the requirement to put information on the ballot that was not really all that helpful for voters given changes in some of the ed finance policy that you all know a lot more about than I do. I just want to say that I made some comments on the record that we were towing right up to the place where we were getting over our skis in House Government Operations and Military Affairs. So I'm very happy to have you all taking a look at this. And yeah, House Government Operations passed this on a 12-0 vote.
Thank you very much. Anyone have any questions for Chair McCarthy? And then we'll, yeah.
I do. On the third instance of amendment, which I think would change the introduced bill, so it would read.
I'm going to pause you for 1 second,
Yeah.
if you don't mind. So there are some technical amendments that Tucker's going to take us through that I don't even know if Representative McCarthy's seen.
Okay, I'll hold off then. All right.
Great. I'm really excited to have this back in our committee.
Yeah.
Now that we're talking about electronic meetings and things like that, was there any discussion in your committee about mail-in voting for town meeting day? About expanding that to town meeting day?
So there's going to be discussion about balloting and about the long-term future of all of these authorizations. We chose to only focus on the immediate authorizations that would be needed to impact this town meeting day. It was very clear, and the committee last biennium had a lot of discussion about the logistical complexity and the expense to individual towns of any kind of requirement to mail ballots. Now, if a community chooses to mail ballots, that was one of the things that we had authorized. I think that's another question, but we didn't address those issues in this bill because we only took up the things that were specifically about temporary authorizations, and we didn't create anything new.
Thank you.
So, Michael, in this bill, if people want to go to the town clerk's office and request an absentee ballot or get it mailed to them, they could do that, but it won't automatically be mailed to them in their homes. Is that right?
That's correct. This bill changes absolutely nothing about the automatic mailing that we approved last biennium and made permanent for general elections. Those changes were not made, and some people have proposed them, but the legislature has not yet because of the issues I just mentioned in response to Representative Mattis's question. We haven't gotten to the place yet where we're ready to do universal municipal ballots. It's a little more complicated than the general election, actually.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much for coming up here.
Yeah. Would you like me to stick around? I have a witness in the seat, and I'm a little nervous about my vice chair with his maiden voyage as the.
Thank you so much for coming up here. Really appreciate it.
So much.
Tucker and Beth, I don't know what however you want to organize yourselves.
All right. Good morning, everyone. Tucker Anderson, Legislative Counsel. You have in front of you H42 as it was voted out by the House Government Operations and Military Affairs Committee, which I am still adjusting to saying the longer title, not just HGO. There hasn't been a cool term made for the committee yet, maybe GOMA or something like that.
I don't think that's cool.
Not good. Since this is the first walkthrough that I'm doing with this committee, I wanted to check in the past. I was asked to cover some of these specific provisions in the municipal bills or municipal charters, but give a general overview of some of the other sections. How would you like me to move through this bill?
I would appreciate if you could, I'll check in with the committee. Folks like if walk through the full bill, it's not that long, so.
Yes.
All right.
A question, are we looking at the draft or at the bill?
We were looking at, I think it's called draft bill, as introduced,
Yeah.
right?
Yes.
So we're looking at the
Yes.
introduced right now.
Yeah, I'll start with the as introduced, and as I move through, I'll flag 3 instances, 2 instances where a technical correction is necessary to fix an error in the language, and 1 instance where we flagged, let's say, a temporal issue about the duration of the ballot language suspension.
And Tucker, just so you know, in the future, if we have a 45-page bill from GovOps and there's just one little fee in there, we might not want the full overview. So thank you for checking in. I'll bring it again next time.
Crushing my heart. I love walking through 42 pages of droll
Charter changes.
So we'll start in section 1. If you're looking at the as introduced version, this is on page 2. And this section broadly is going to be dealing with the alternative procedures for the annual municipal meetings. And this is municipalities as well as your school districts. Starting in subsection A deals with the ability to move the annual meeting date until July 1st, 2024. So that would be for this year, 2023, and next year. This notwithstands any provision of law to the contrary and gives the legislative body of a municipality the authority to move the annual meeting date.
Okay.
Towards the end of that subsection, it requires that all of the elected officers who are in office at the time that the annual meeting date is moved will remain in office so that you still have municipal government until an election can be held.
What does that mean for your budgets if you move the meeting? If you move it past, say, your June 30th, end of your fiscal year?
I would say that would not be wise for municipality to do. And Representative McCarthy did accurately point out that the previous authorizations in Act 1, Acts 77 through 79, and I can't remember what the 2020 Act numbers were. In all of those discussions, one of the repeated questions has been, how would moving the annual meeting date affect municipal budgets? And if this is a school district, how would it affect, reporting of the school district budgets to the state? And the answer is that this is suspending the statutory annual meeting dates. It does not affect any of the duties a municipality or a school district might have to meet other deadlines that are established in statute.
Okay.
So if your fiscal year is going to end and you have not adopted a budget, you must. You're going to have to meet that deadline in order to have funds to spend in the next fiscal year.
In regards to Ed Fund, I don't know if you'll know the answer to it, but do we still have the mechanism where if you don't have a passed budget by the new fiscal year, it's 80% of your previously, is that still in effect? That might be a bad thing.
Thank you.
Yes.
Yes, please.
That's St. James Office of Legislative Counsel. There is a mechanism, there is a provision in state law for what happens if the school budget does not pass. I don't know exactly what it is off the top of my head, but I can find it right now, but it is accounted for.
Okay.
It's 86%.
Is it 86 of your previously approved budget?
Beth will send it to us.
All right, subsection B. This deals with applying the Australian ballot system to the votes of municipalities for their annual and special meetings in the upcoming year until July 1st, 2024. So this will allow the legislative body of the municipality to vote to apply the Australian ballot system in the municipality. And if they do that, there's a sentence in here that says that if there's any reconsideration votes that are required, for example, for the budget, that those will also be held by Australian ballot. One question that was sent to me ahead of time and I was asked to address was whether this allows a municipality to permanently shift to Australian ballot under this, and the answer is no. This is temporary authority suspending the requirements for the next 2 years. And if you have a town where you are voting from the floor, viva voce, as we say, you will revert to that until the town and the voters at an annual meeting can approve Australian ballot for future elections. This is one area where there's a technical correction. So subsection B, there's going to be 2 changes in the amendment I'll cover quickly later. The first is that the reference to 16 VSA section 711E has subsequently changed and is now in 723 subsection A. So that's the first technical correction to fix that error in the statutory reference. The second is on line 15, striking the word held because it's confusing and unnecessary and does not read well. All right, subsection C. This deals with the public information hearings that are held prior to the annual meeting. So
Sorry, 1 second. Wondering if anyone is able to leave the room and come back in a little bit. I was not asking the press to leave. I was thinking, okay.
I know who you're talking to.
I really wasn't. Okay.
So as many of you may have experienced, in the days preceding an annual meeting, a municipality will sometimes hold informational hearings to do things such as discuss the budget. Some of these municipalities will have actual input from the town residents as they're forming the budget. This subsection will allow them to hold an electronic informational hearing instead of gathering in person, if that's what the municipality wants to do. And this is moving on to page 3. If they choose to have an electronic informational hearing, they have to follow all of the requirements in section 2 of the bill. Subsections D and E, I'll take together. These are special pieces of authority for just two municipalities.
Sorry.
One is Brattleboro, and that's because Brattleboro is exceptionally unique and is that the only municipality in the state that uses an annual representative town meeting. So they are granted discretionary authority here that if they need to, they can hold that electronically. And the second is the Northeast Kingdom Waste Management District, which is also exceptionally unique, and that is the only waste management district that requires the budget to be approved by the voters of the district. So all voters in the 49 towns comprising the district. So subsection E here allows the Board of Supervisors to approve the budget in lieu of that town by town vote. All right, section 2, these are temporary open meeting law provisions. You have likely seen these before. This suspends the designated physical location requirements under the open meeting law so that public bodies of the state and its political subdivisions can meet electronically without designating a physical meeting location where a member of the body or staff must be present. So this allows fully remote meetings if that's what the public body wants to do. If you
Tucker, were those provisions set to expire next week? Is that right?
That is correct. They are in place right now. They expire January 15th.
Thank you.
If you look at page 4, there are some specific requirements for access by the public. These are all taken from Acts 77 and 79 and prior authorizations in 2020.
We're over capacity, so is there anyone else who can volunteer to leave the room?
Beth and Sue, maybe?
We can, we're over capacity.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you. I'm sorry. I just don't want to ask reporters to leave.
Oh, no, that's fine. Not to go.
We'll call you back.
All right, section 3. So we're on page 5 now, mercifully at the end of this walkthrough for all of you. Section 3 deals with a suspension of school budget ballot language. There is a suspension of this same statutory provision that passed last year and suspends this same language from fiscal year 2025 through 2029, July 1st, 2024 in real year counting through June 30th, 2029. What section 3 does is it adds another year to that suspension and brings it closer to our current date. But there may be an error in how this was constructed. So this notwithstands 16 VSA section 563 subdivision 11D, which has specific ballot language that a school board must use for its budget provisions on the ballot, and suspends that. And here in section 3, it says during fiscal year 2024. Fiscal year 2024 starts on July 1st, 2023. So if the intent is to have this suspension be immediately available so that the ballot language does not have to be used this year, then this language should be changed to strike fiscal year and state that the suspension is effective for 2023 and 2024. And that's what I will cover in the amendment. Section 4 states that the authority in sections 1 and 2 expires July 1st, 2024, in case that wasn't clear by it being stated in every single subsection. And in section 5, the act is made effective on passage. I'll quickly cover the amendment that I put together in case you wanted to pursue some of the technical corrections here. The first instance of amendment, and you should be looking at draft 1.1, corrects that reference to Title 16 in the Australian ballot subsection. And in the second instance of amendment, it strikes the word held so that we're not confusing folks with that language. The third instance replaces fiscal year with the years 2023 and, so that the school budget ballot language requirement will be suspended this year and next year and will lead into the Act 127, Beth? Is that what it was? Act 127 suspension, which is effective July 1st, 2024.
Thank you.
My pleasure.
I just want to be clear for the committee about my own intentions. I do not think the ballot language should be suspended forevermore. I think consistency across communities and how issues of taxation are communicated about is very, very helpful. And during this tumultuous time for school budgets with the ESSER line down and the ramping up of the pupil weight changes, I think it's really helpful. I would hope over this biennium, we could spend some real time working on new draft language for those warnings. And that's something that I think all of the school associated associations have been also thinking about and working on. Yeah.
Just want to make sure I'm understanding this. So I think I'm hearing you say consistent language that everyone should use is really important, but that this current language is not ideal at this moment of all the changes, and it might lead to is the concern that this leads to confusion?
Yeah, and we'll hear from all the
people
about that. So Tucker, does anyone have any questions for Tucker about the legal language? Thank you.
Thank you all.
Ms. Richter, can you join us to tell us about the possible fiscal impact of this bill? And for new committee members, I'm sorry to say that we don't have a fiscal note for our very first bill because it wasn't appropriate, but most of our future bills will have fiscal notes because it will be appropriate.
Yes. So for the record, I'm Julia Richter with the Joint Fiscal Office. My testimony will probably be relatively short today. I don't have a fiscal note prepared, really because JFO can't estimate the fiscal impact because education spending, as we know, ultimately depends on local decisions. The only other thing that I prepared to note is there may be increased uncertainty in the setting of the yields during the session, depending on when school budgets are voted.
Any questions?
Thank you.
Commissioner Bolio.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
And thank you for everyone actually, for your responsiveness on this timeline we are on here.
Oh, happy to help. For the record, Craig Bolio, Tax Commissioner. I'm speaking only about Section 3 of the bill today, the provision for the suspension of the ballot language. The administration doesn't see the need to suspend the language for this year. It's one element of transparency in a very complex and difficult to understand system. It's not clear to me what we gain by withholding information from voters. I will say when we testified on this last year as part of the pupil weighting, we definitely understood the value of it in the transition year because of the way the equalized pupil counts would change for districts, that the numbers would be really wonky. But even at the time, we didn't see the need to suspend it long-term after that. And I would say it could be considered one of the few cost containment measures that we have as well. And so with, what we talked about yesterday in my testimony about challenges with relying on big surpluses for a while, I know districts and the legislature are worried about federal funds drying up for schools, that we should be interested in cost containment. So, if the committee is interested in moving this provision forward, we get it. But we would look very much forward to working together on future cost containment and ways to reintroduce this language in an effective way.
I guess I would share that you said something about, it was a word that was the opposite of transparency, but I don't remember what word you used.
I thought I only used the word transparency.
Okay, maybe withhold transparency?
Sure, yes.
Okay. And I guess I would say that in this instance, we're leaving it up to school boards to communicate in the way that they find most transparent and most effective, rather than withholding information. I think there's going to be communication on each warning. And so I think it's a sort of a, just a difference of opinion.
I would hope that happens. I mean, this language ensures that it happens.
Absolutely. Any questions? Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Sue, would you like to join us?
Sure.
Thank you. I believe this is your first time in the committee this year.
Yes,
So
it is.
welcome.
Thank
Very
you.
good to see you. I was gonna say, the other two Jeffs aren't here yet, but we're gonna do an introduction and then hope the other two Jeffs are watching from somewhere so we don't do it 3 times. So anyway, Emily Kornheiser, Chair of the Committee. Good to see you.
Bill Canfield.
Julie Andrews.
Catherine Sims.
Jim Maslin.
Scott Beck.
Chris Mattos.
Kirk Taylor. Peter Anthony.
Carolyn Brannigan.
Thank you. Thank you very much for asking me to join you. I am Sue Siglowski. I'm the Executive Director of the Vermont School Boards Association. I think that my testimony can be rather brief as well. We support the bill with the revisions that your legislative council spoke about. And specifically on section 3, the language in the law right now we think is well intended. And of course, agree that cost containment is very important consideration. But the language as it currently exists, we think can be quite confusing because it doesn't cover all the aspects of how the system works. And so there could be an instance where you've got language on the ballot that misleads a voter as to what the consequences are going to be of voting yes or no on the school budget. So for that reason, we do support section 3 of the bill. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you for coming in.
Thank you.
Both come in.
Jeff Fannin, you're first, and then Jeff Francis. Jeff Fannin is first, and then Jeff Francis. It was Jeff Fannin, you're first. Yeah.
I'm Steve.
Thank you.
Good morning. For the record, Jeff Fannin, Executive Director of Vermont NEA. Thank you for inviting me here to talk about I'm going to talk about the ballot provision only, and that's all I'm prepared to talk about. So if you have other things, I'll try to do my best. But so here's what I would say. I think this is a question of fairness. Fairness in what we say to taxpayers, voters, schools, students. I think the ballot language, given where we are today, coming out of a pandemic with enormous infusions of dollars from the federal government under ESSER 1, 2, and 3, the numbers are skewed and don't accurately, sort of compare apples to oranges over year and those sorts of things. So in a matter of fairness to all, I applaud the effort to dispense with that language and recommend that you do so. It makes a whole lot of sense, especially now where we are. Personally, never liked it. It seems to cherry pick certain aspects of budgeting, putting that into the ballot. But having said that, now more than ever, I think it's important to remove that language, in fairness to everybody involved, given all the moving parts in school budgeting these days. So those are some substance of my comments. Thank you.
Thank you. And can you work with us over the biennium to draft some new ballot warning language?
Absolutely.
Great, thank you.
I think it could be worded better. And as I said, I wasn't always a fan of it, but I understood where it came from. But I think we can do better. Certainly language crafting is always something, wordsmithing is something we all engage in. And I think we can do better at that.
Thank you. Any questions? Okay, thank you.
Thank you all. Welcome back for some of you.
Thank you. Welcome to the committee in its
Yes.
new location.
New location, right? Yeah, the
Yes.
doors are confusing.
They are very confusing, yes,
Thank you
yes,
for welcoming me.
yes. Jeff Francis,
I will
thank you.
part of the room to give you space and air.
Good morning. I'm Jeff Francis. I'm the Executive Director of the School Superintendent's Association. Good to be with you. Good to see those of you who I've worked with before and say hello to those of you who haven't. And thanks for the invitation to come in. I'm here to support the amendment that would affect the mandatory ballot language. I had communicated with Chair Kornheiser, Chair Conlon about this because through work that I did with school business officials, principally in the fall, they, given the current challenges, were interested in examining that language because I think they correctly point out that in its limitations of explanation, it actually doesn't take into account things that are factors in an understanding of how education spending and budgets translate to tax rates. So in the communications that I had with Chairs Conlon and Kornheiser, I explained I was hearing about that and I was hoping that the General Assembly would take it up. I knew that it needed to be taken up quickly, but I didn't quite expect that it was going to be taken up this quickly. I think it's appropriate that it's attached to the bill that's under consideration. And like Jeff Fannin before me and presumably Sue Siglowski, I'd ask that you do remove the requirement for the mandatory language, allow local school officials to work with their constituents in explaining their budgets and what the implications of those budgets will be, and would commit to also working on ballot language like you suggested of Jeff Fannin.
And I would, in addition to hearing from you, I think we all heard from members who are hearing from school boards and school officials and all of our communities
Right.
about the need for this. Thank you.
So thanks.
Yeah, question? Okay. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'll also leave now to make room for others.
There are no others. Now it's just us.
I'll still leave.
For a minute, I wondered if I'd lost someone on the agenda. Discussion, folks, thoughts?
So would we put in wording here or somehow to the school boards of what their proposals should, what their line items should read?
I think we don't have time to do that in the way that I think would lead to the best language. And so what I'm hoping is that we could suspend this year and then actually take the time to wordsmith well about what the ballot should read.
Okay, and in the meantime, we leave it up to each board.
To communicate as effectively as they can.
They'll probably fall back on last year's wording.
They very well might, many of them will. But the ones who won't, I think, might actually serve as really good examples for what we might want to think about using.
Okay, and so if we do this, then we have no open town meeting again, right? That we're having all articles voted on, so that's officers, budgets, any other questions on the ballot, they're
I
all.
think that's more a question for Tucker, who I'm actually gonna maybe.
It's permissive, no.
It's from Tucker, can you answer that instead of me?
Can you repeat the opening to your
So-
question?
My question is, does this mean we have then no open town meeting, like we had no open town meeting last year in my town? So everything was on the ballot, so that included all the officers, the town budget, the school budget, giving the select board and the school board each permission to borrow money in lieu of tax. Everything that was on the warning would be voted on in secret by secret ballot. Is that what we're doing?
So the authority here is discretionary. And this really is only going to affect towns that haven't already adopted Australian ballot. The towns that have adopted Australian ballot likely are already using secret ballot to vote for the upcoming annual meeting. And there's already authority, for example, in 17 VSA section 2680 G1 and 2 for towns, cities, and incorporated villages and school boards to mail their ballots. So again, this is discretionary and it's being made available to those towns that are currently voting from the floor in the event that their legislative body determines it's appropriate for this year or next year to switch to Australian ballot. Again, if that's what the select board, village trustees, what have you, decide is necessary.
And they can include all of those line items that were on the open meeting ballot.
Yes.
Okay. Well, you know what, my opinion, I feel like this is probably the smartest thing to do from a health standpoint. But I feel like we're losing a big chunk of what's important in Vermont. That open meeting where you sit in the same room, sip a cup of coffee and discuss with your neighbor whether or not you wanna fix that little bridge on Town Road 41.
I agree, and I know that, while Brattleboro is special and unique, we are a lot, in most ways like most other towns. And I know that even if this permission is granted, we're still gonna have a public in-person town meeting in Brattleboro. And I think that's probably true for a lot of towns. And I know even some towns last year did it outside so that they could still have an open meeting. So this is just permission if they don't want to.
Okay, so they don't have.
Yeah, I mean, I have 4 towns, some moved them and held them outside, some did it all online, some held them in person. And what I appreciate is sort of recognizing the diversity of our communities and giving them flexibility to make the choice that's right for them.
Yeah.
And, they're really big, complex questions about how do we support inclusive democracy?
Yes.
And, I can see it lots of different ways. And I think these are important questions to allow communities tools to make the choice that's right for them in this strange moment.
I agree with both of you. Although I'm on the select board. I'm town moderator too. But
it's a chance to get out of it.
So I'm pretty sure they'll vote to do this. Everybody's worried about COVID. We've still got people who don't have their vaccinations.
Yeah. Representative Beck.
I move that we approve House Bill 42 as amended in draft 1.1.
Second.
Yeah, actually, much discussion.
Clarification. We have to approve his amendments first.
Ooh, thank you.
Yeah, getting us back.
I hate to point at you.
Thank you very much. Yes.
Yeah, I'll second the amendment.
Okay. Thank you. Is there any discussion on the amendment, which is technical?
Yeah, Madison, you okay, second.
Didn't Olio, the tax guy, he's gone.
Yeah.
Didn't he say the governor didn't want this?
Yes, but let's talk about the amendment first before we talk about the underlying bill, if that's okay with you. So any discussions on the technical changes in the amendment?
And this was to make sure that we're doing it at the time at which we intend.
And that the cross references are correct.
Fixing a statutory reference, eliminating the word held where it was inserted where it shouldn't be, and then making sure that the ballot suspension is effective for 2023 until July 1st, 2024.
Any discussion on that? Yeah.
Yeah, just third instance there. I'm a little bummed that we're getting rid of that language because it is consistency across all school districts and SUs. I appreciate it. I can speak for Milton in the past. I appreciate our school board. They send out a little one-page flyer that goes over, the key bullet points, kind of tells what the impact is of the budget from their lens. So by getting rid of this, I'm hopeful that our school board and that I'm in Georgia as well can send out that information to just keep the voters involved, and more information is always better. I'd love to see it still there, but I'm not going to hold it up to pass the amendment.
Thanks. Okay, let's vote the amendment and then we can have a broader discussion on the underlying bill.
So, Andrews, yes. Anthony,
Yes.
Beck,
Yes.
Brannigan,
Yes.
Canfield,
Yes.
Demro,
Yes.
Maslin,
Yep.
Meadows,
Yes.
Bodie,
Yes.
Sims,
Yes.
Taylor,
Yes.
Kornheiser.
Yes. And then if you could read the vote aloud. 1200.
12-0-0.
Thank you. Congratulations on your first.
Oh, I'm doing things.
Congratulations, everyone, on the first vote, actually, yeah. So discussion on the, can we have a new motion on the bill?
So I'll move that we approve House Bill 42 as amended.
Second.
Discussion.
What did Bolio say? He was here, Commissioner Bolio was in here, and I thought he was, oh darn, now I've lost it. Nope, it's right here. This section 3, I thought he was saying that the governor would prefer that was not in here.
I think we have a representative from the Agency of Education that's interested in answering your question.
Okay.
But can you come up to the chair and identify yourself for the record? Sorry, thank you.
Morning, Ways and Means Committee. I'm Ted Fisher for the record. Vermont Agency of Education, I'm the agency's Director of Communications and Legislative Affairs. Very glad to be with you. My apologies. Commissioner Bolio had to go to another engagement, but I'm sitting here in the room. The concerns of the administration, just to sort of restate what the commissioner was saying, are related to the transparency of the element it provides. Voters has their in the ballot box this information, as well as we have some concerns about cost containment. There are one of several cost containment measures that the state created in starting back in Act 60 with the goal of trying to ensure that we're providing that information to voters. That's what this item does, but there are several other items that also, such as the excess spending threshold that have been historically designed to try to reduce or slow the growth of education spending. So we have some concerns about that. Are eager to work with the committee, and sounds like the committee is also eager on some updated language related to this and other consider other items around cost containment as well. So that's our concern, Bill, and we wanted to state that.
So do you have that language with you?
I'm sorry, what language represents?
Language you just referenced, that instead of using the language that's in the bill, you would propose other language, unless I misunderstood you.
No, I apologize. We'd be interested in working with the committee on this issue. And I think my understanding, if I understand what the chair mentioned earlier, is a goal of trying to do that perhaps over a slightly longer timeline than today. But we did want to note our concerns before you move this bill along with losing this item this year.
So if we leave this in here, will the governor veto it?
I do not feel comfortable speaking for the governor on that, but I don't think that raises to that level of concern. I'd like to just express that we've seen the excess spending threshold and the hold harmless provision have also been waived as part of the pupil weighting factors, and also as a result of Act 46. Some of the Act 46, we changed the hold harmless provisions sort of historically to try to encourage districts with mergers and things like that. And so these are sort of historical attempts by the state to fulfill its constitutional obligation to provide education, to provide for Vermont education, and part of that obligation is to try to also control the growth of the cost of education spending. So, I like I said, I don't want to speak for the governor one way or the other as the bill moves through the process, but we just wanted to state for you, for transparency, what our concerns are.
And I appreciate that. If I could continue, Madam Chair, I do appreciate that. I know I serve on the select board in my town. We have a deadline of January 17th before we've got to have our town report all ready and our ballots all ready for printing, because the ballot appears in the town report. And so we don't have time to fiddle. I guess I'm kind of looking to you to help keep peace in the family. If we will still have peace by voting this in and then coming back to it later to work on it, then I guess that does what I want it to do.
Sorry.
No, I know that you have not come with language today, and this is a very sort of tight turnaround because of January 17th. And that's why we are moving fast. And I know that it's sort of caught a lot of people unawares. And so I don't want to put you in a position of making an official statement when you.
Yeah, I think I absolutely understand, I absolutely understand that, and we understand that any conversations about longer term, more durable solutions would occur not in time for this year. And I'm comfortable with that.
Okay. And I think it's for the group or?
It's for the group. It's
Okay,
on
thank you.
it's on the underlying bill.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Not on section 3. I just want to say that I hear Representative Brannigan's concerns about sections 1 and 2. And I just want to say that I appreciate the flexibility that this offers our towns. And my town, I'm on the select board in my town as well. And for the past 2 years, we've held our town meeting in person under a tent in May. And we would have the flexibility to do that again if we wanted to. And I don't think we're going to do that. I think we're going to have an in-town meeting in person on March 7th. And I think most of the folks in town are looking forward to doing that. But I appreciate the not one size fits all solution here.
And this is sort of, the first time we've had the opportunity to have a bill before us where 2/3 of it are not quite our purview, but things that we all have strong feelings about because we all love town meeting. And then there's this little piece that's, isn't our purview. And so I appreciate the chance to sort of talk about the philosophy of the bigger bill that we all need to vote out. Does anyone have any other items for discussion?
I'd ask for a
Yeah, I was just gonna do that
recess.
before anyone, yeah, okay. So let's take a little break and we'll come back after the break. Thanks.
So we're not voting